Well, I think we all agree here in this room that we need the radical transformation of our energy system to efficient use of renewable energies. And the two driving forces are clear to everybody. On the one hand side, the grave dangers of catastrophic climate change. I think the dangers are larger than just the danger of a gradual global warming and a slowly increasing level of the sea. The biggest danger certainly will be that we lose the stability of our climate system, and as a matter of fact, nobody, not even the best climatologists, can really predict what we are facing when we substantially change the composition of our atmosphere. So it's a very risky experiment which we are just now undertaking with planet Earth, and I think we should do everything to avoid that it gets too unpleasant to us in terms of storms which blow away all the houses. And I think some of the early inclinations of this we have seen. The second, equally strong, and for some people in the business area even stronger driving forces, we all face the shortage of fossil fuels. Peak oil has been already passed a few years ago when we had 92 million barrels of oil taken out of the ground each day. Now we are down to in the upper 80s, and I think we will never ever reach 100 million barrels of oil, which we would need if we want to continue business as usual. So business as usual is no option, but the big problem is if we only rely on the power of converting the energy system based on the starting shortage of fossil fuels, we will definitely come too late to solve the climate problem. So if we see that we anyway have no choice but to make the transformation of the energy system to a renewable energy system, why not make it quick enough that in this course we as well take care that the climate problem doesn't get too severe. This is a challenge the world, our generation is facing, and I personally can say it is the most important challenge for many of us. Just one word to the nuclear power plant issue. It was raised in a question just shortly ago, and you all know that Germany at the moment has gone out on a limb compared to all other countries and almost all other countries of the world. And why has it happened in the aftermath of the Fukushima catastrophe? I want to share with you just 5 points. The first point is, nuclear technology is a technology like some other technologies we are using, which will never be 100% controllable. You can control a nuclear power plant, you can predict, if you know the starting conditions, what will be possible paths of how this thing behaves. But if our fantasy is not enough to think about all possible combinations of starting situations in advance, we might enter situations like we had it in Fukushima, with a combined failure of the external power grid and of the emergency generators. And this combination happened as a consequence of a tidal wave and an earthquake, but this combination can as well happen for other reasons. In Sweden was a nuclear power which almost came to a meltdown when there was a failure of the power grid, when the first emergency generator failed, and the second emergency generator, which was identical in construction to the first generator, started for reasons nobody understands, because these two guys were built in the same way. So if the second generator would have failed too, we would have had in Sweden a few years ago just a Fukushima accident. So such a risk we can take in certain technologies. We cannot say humans can never make risky technology work. If we have a space shuttle, for instance, the space shuttle was one of the most carefully designed pieces of hardware humans ever constructed. Everything was fail-safe. But nobody thought about that O-rings, when they are cold, will not seal efficiently. Nobody thought about that styrofoam, which was used to insulate the storage tanks, could fall off during start and damage the engine. So exactly the same situation what we had in the nuclear power plant. The difference, of course, in the case of the space shuttle, you endanger the astronauts which are sitting in the space shuttle, and they know, of course, they are on a dangerous course, whereas in the case of a nuclear power plant, you can endanger hundreds of millions of people. If the wind from Fukushima would have blown in a different direction right after the accident, who would have evacuated 35 million people? Cannot be done. So I think, and we in Germany came to the conclusion, for a nuclear power plant, this principal risk of complex technology cannot be tolerated. We endanger potentially millions of people, and the damages we are facing is not being paid by any insurance company. The damages, as we see in Japan, is taken care for by the taxpayers. Therefore, the German Parliament, and this is a very interesting date, just last week in the second chamber decided to finally get rid of nuclear power in Germany for all times, to shut down 8 reactors immediately forever, and to shut down the remaining 9 reactors gradually till 2022, and to replace most of it, the nuclear and fossil power, as quickly as possible by renewable energy. So what does this big transformation of our global energy system mean? We need, first of all, and I never forget to start with this, increase efficiency of energy, increase the efficiency of buildings, increase the efficiency of transportation and of production. Parallel, and you heard it fantastic described by Ramesh with the Sunshot initiative, we have to do everything for the rapid development and deployment of renewable energies. We need everything. We need wind, photovoltaic, solar thermal, hydro, geothermal, biomass from waste material towards a 100% renewable energy future. We need to develop energy storage technologies because lots of the renewable energy, wind and solar, is fluctuating in time. And of course we have to take care that the electricity grid can carry the power from where it is generated, and these are new places in comparison to before, and to bring them to the customers. And the customers should start to be enabled to be smart customers, to be aware of the pricing structure, for instance, to put the electric vehicle up as a battery storage device if they know they only need it next morning, and they are sure next morning the battery will be fully charged, but in the process they might have given up electricity and taken it back and gained some additional money out of this. This is one of so many scenarios how the German electricity supply could develop. You see the change till 2050 to 100% renewable supply. You see the phase out of nuclear power, which is this part here. You see the increase of renewables, at the moment 17% in Germany, and of course the phase out of the fossil power. And what is very interesting to note is in Germany, and it is quite similar in the United States, a large fraction of our electricity is based from imports from oil, coal and gas. And only the part of the renewables in Germany right now is domestic energy. In the United States you have a little bit of domestic oil, but the big dependence of imports is still the same. And in the new energy scenario, only the imported electricity from projects like Desertec, from sun-rich areas, will remain as an energy import. All of the other energy will be supplied domestically, adding greatly to the security of the country. I have shown this picture already in the last years. It is a big pleasure to show it again this year. The growth of the PV market starting in 2003, when the global PV market was about as large as today's PV market is here in the United States, 600 megawatts. And in 2003, the most optimistic growth curve thought about a 25% growth, but the real data by far exceeded the most optimistic curve. And as a matter of fact, the number for 2010, 17 gigawatt, is not where this arrow is. It is up somewhere out of the roof, because if you see here the scale, this goes from 0 to 5 gigawatt, so 17 gigawatt is actually up in the sky. So this is really what happened. There's no indication that it will not continue. I like to say the avalanche of photovoltaics globally has started to slow down the hill, and it will get stronger and stronger as we speak. The reason for this is, of course, the constant decrease of the price and the cost of photovoltaics. It was true 2-3 years ago to say photovoltaics, it's far too expensive, it will never be very interesting. But the point is, we have a learning curve which was followed since several decades, which shows that the cost of photovoltaics, and this particular curve is based for crystalline silicon, has decreased by 20% for each doubling of the globally installed quantity. And this is a very important observation. The horizontal axis of the learning curve is not time. There is no way to say, let's wait 10 years till photovoltaics is inexpensive and then we can start. The driving force is the combination of research, innovation, and the live market. And this has driven down the learning curve, and I'm sure the Sunshot Initiative will help to drive it down in the way to come to $1 per watt system price, 5 cents a kilowatt hour electricity price to be competitive with all conventional sources of energy. In Germany, we have a very good way to show the progress, because in Germany we use a feed-in rate, which simply says anybody who creates photovoltaic energy gets a fair price paid for this. Some people have translated this with the word feed-in tariff, which is a completely stupid translation, because a feed-in rate has nothing to do with a tax or a tariff. It is just the word-by-word translation of Einspeisetarif in Germany. So somebody just made a massive mistake. So the feed-in rate is just the fair price for electricity which should be offered to anybody who puts in PV or wind or other sources of renewable energy into operation. So let us now look at the development of the feed-in rate for PV in Germany. And we see that the feed-in rate has dropped drastically till today as we speak. And as a matter of fact, if you look very careful, from 2012, we get the famous grid parity, the feed-in rate, not the cost of the electricity, the feed-in rate, which includes already some amount of profit, will fall below the household electricity rate. As a matter of fact, yesterday I suggested the simplest policy market support mechanism would be to offer the household electricity rate as a feed-in rate for PV. Basically, it means, first of all, net metering, because net metering is nothing else, because when you produce your own PV, you don't buy the electricity from the grid, so you get the household electricity rate. But if you create more electricity than your own needs, the electricity flows to your neighbor, and your neighbor pays the household electricity rate. So instead of going to the power company, the money goes to you because you are the producer. So essentially, for the utility, such a scheme would mean the effect of installing a PV panel is exactly like the effect of increased energy efficiency, lower electricity consumption by the consumer. So I don't see why it should be difficult to install such a system. And as a matter of fact, if one gives an additional provision that you don't get the household electricity rate as a function of time, you get only the household electricity rate at the time you install the system, down the road it will have a price dampening effect because the people get the old household electricity rate. Electricity rates have gone up, so the neighbor pays a little bit more for the electricity he gets from you. So I think it works well. And as you see, we expect soon to cross as well the industry electricity rate, which is here the red curve. We will cross the offshore wind, which is a very expensive way to create renewable electricity. And at the end, onshore wind and photovoltaics will carry the day. Due to the pressure of the decreasing feed-in rates in Germany, the system prices in Germany are close to the lowest in the world. $3.50 for a readily installed system, including the money for the guy who climbs on the roof, compares to something like $7.50 here in California. So I think having the feed-in rate in place is a very healthy way to drive down the system prices. And I think we all agree worldwide it has been shown to be the most effective measure to stimulate renewable energy growth. Just one picture to technology, because really some people say, well, PV is driven by silicon technology, but silicon is old technology, we should go into completely new directions. Let me tell you one message. There is a lot of innovation and progress in good old silicon PV technology. I just show you this one picture which shows that if you use a solar cell and you don't make a contact to the whole back surface, you make the contact only in individual spots which you can create by a laser, 10,000 spots in 1 second, then you can passivate the back surface very efficiently. You get a higher efficiency without adding much cost to it. You have to as well texturize the front surface, and just as an example, with these type of technologies we could show it easy, more than 20% efficiency for a multi-crystalline silicon wafer. I remember when people said with Czochralski silicon, which is a single crystal technology, we cannot exceed 20%. Now we can even exceed it with the very inexpensive multi-crystalline silicon, just as an example where we go. Where are we today? We have a big discrepancy between the supply in photovoltaics and the demand. The demand is pretty much focused on Europe. Since 2010, 89% of PV systems were installed in Europe. The supply is concentrated on China. So we should in the future try to balance this imbalance. We need more installations in Asia and in China. We need more production where the PV systems are really being used. This graph shows the PV shipment growth till 2010, and again you see, if you look carefully, most of it now comes out of China. A few years back, if you look at 2006, the picture was still very, very different. Today the world market as sales is very much dominated by Europe, Asia, a small fraction, North America, an even smaller fraction. And I would like to challenge the United States to make sure to stay ahead of the Chinese PV market. We will see in 2011 how the numbers come out. It will be a quite interesting race, and I think everybody agrees that we should make sure that the United States deploys faster. And these are the numbers as we see them today, and I hope next time we will see them even better. So the PV markets outside Europe are really expected to grow faster, but as we see from these numbers, starting at a lower level. Now we go beyond 2010. Expectations are till 2014 that the PV market goes to a 30 gigawatt market, that we have an increased share outside Europe, as I mentioned before. And these data suggest from the Zarazin Bank that as early as 2020, the world PV market will be a 100 gigawatt market. A 100 gigawatt market translates into more than $100 billion market value, a very important part of industry, very important for jobs, for economic activities. And the growth rates, which sometimes reached crazy 160%, will of course not continue to be so crazy, but even a 20-30% growth rate is sufficient to lead us to these levels of more than 100 gigawatt market a year. In Germany, the PV market segments are very much have a very big emphasis on decentralized systems on private homes, which is a direct consequence of the feed-in rate system, because everybody with very little paperwork, yesterday we saw it, just one simple form, can apply to get the feed-in rate which is appropriate for the installation. We do have, of course, as well large installations, but the beauty of the decentralized installations is you need very little changes to the grid, because basically what you do is you take demand off the grid. The grid was constructed to supply 24/7 the power, and it is undistinguishable for the power company that the demand goes down because people now save energy more efficiently or because they are using PV systems. Therefore, the decentralized PV, very important. Let's not forget that solar energy is not only photovoltaics. We have as well solar thermal energy to heat water, and actually it is a sin not to have on each roof in a sunny area a water heater. If you go to Israel as an example, Israel has since many years a building code. You don't find a home in Israel without the water heater on the roof. So why not have such building codes in all areas where we have enough sunshine? The other use of solar thermal is we can produce electricity with it in solar thermal power plants, especially here in the United States. We have had installations which are in operation more than 20 years. Today, we should note that the price of electricity of solar thermal power plants is no longer below the electricity generated from PV. And in the future, I expect the solar thermal power plants to be mainly of interest because we can easily store the heat make electricity available in the night when the sun doesn't shine, but during the day it is much less costly to use photovoltaics to generate the electricity. In Europe, we have designed the project Desertec to bring the power from where we have a lot of sunshine, and actually even from where we have a large amount of hydropower, like this line here which goes to Norway, and bring it back to the area where we need it. This is a project which needs 20-30 years, so it is not for tomorrow. This project will start supplying solar energy to the countries of Northern Africa for their own need, and only after this has been satisfied we can start to ship in Europe. But in reality, this is the concept of the future, and my personal vision is shown very well in this picture here, because we have possibilities of high power DC transmission. Down the road we have even the possibility to use high temperature superconducting cables to transmit gigawatts of power. So there will be no technology reason why not to have a worldwide grid. And of course, the idea behind the worldwide grid is the sun shines at any hour of the day on some part of the world. So the only task we have is bring the electricity from where the sun shines to where it is needed. So this probably will not be in my lifetime. I guess it is behind 2050, but technologically, I'm pretty convinced it will work. It's a pity I cannot make a bet with somebody for the year 2060. And of course, a very important part of it is the economic benefit. Basically, the transformation of the global energy system is the biggest economic stimulus program since the invention of tanks and weapons, because of course the whole defense industry uses exactly the same argument. So let's get rid, and I say this now as a person and not as a representative of my institute, let's get rid of the weapons and use the same thousands of billions of dollars for the generation of jobs in the renewable energy sector. And you see this is a projection of Greenpeace, and as you see a very detailed projection, different scenarios, but on the right bottom corner you see millions of jobs can be generated in this way. This is really the biggest economic stimulus program ever. So I would like to come to the conclusion. I think the transformation of our energy system, which is a topic of our show here in San Francisco, to the efficient use of renewable energy, it started already in Germany in a very convincing way, and the other countries of the world actually are challenged to see what is happening right now in Germany. And I think our friends, and with me, with my 2 passports from the United States and Germany, I will be the first to say the United States really can do the same and can do it even better, because we have very strong people here and we have very innovative leaders and very inspiring leaders. So let's go for that. 100% renewable energy is absolutely possible, and in Freiburg we try to use the challenge to get 100% renewable energy by 2030. On a bigger picture, we will face it by 2050. The German strategy is in parallel R&D and market development. PV will be one of the major pillars, between 10% and 40% of our global world energy system. And the market should grow now in countries in addition to the European countries, so that it helps to bring down the cost. And I hope that Intersolar North America 2011, our conference here in the coming days, the show next door, will help to accelerate this process. And this would be my biggest wish here. Thank you so much.